Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Pod. I'm Timo.
And I'm Sophia. We're so glad you've joined us today because we have a fascinating topic to discuss.
That's right, Sophia. In today's episode, we're diving into a powerful quote by Elon Musk, where he reflects on the dangers of wishful thinking and the value of striving for truth.
It's not just about understanding the meaning of his words, but also learning how to use the vocabulary and phrases he shared in your own conversations. Plus, we'll give you tips to improve your listening and speaking skills as you follow along.
Absolutely. So grab a notebook and let's get started.
Before we explore the quote, let's review some important vocabulary and phrases you'll hear.
These words and expressions are not only key to understanding the quote, but are also great for enhancing your English skills.
First, we have wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking refers to believing something because you want it to be true, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. For example, saying, "I'll win the lottery this weekend" is often wishful thinking.
Next is real truth.
The real truth refers to objective facts, things that are true, regardless of what you want or feel. It's about reality, not perception.
Another useful phrase is trap to avoid.
A trap to avoid is a common mistake or pitfall that can hinder your progress or cause problems. For instance, letting emotions dictate your decisions is often a trap to avoid.
Let's move on to striving for improvement.
This means continuously working to get better, even if you're already doing well. It's about aiming for progress, not perfection.
Lastly, we have self-awareness.
Self-awareness is the ability to recognize your own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors and how they affect you and others. It's a critical skill for personal growth.
Now that we've covered these terms, let's listen to Elon Musk's quote and see how these ideas come to life.
One of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong and your goal is to be less wrong.
Wow, there's so much to unpack here. Let's break this down for our listeners.
First, let's focus on the idea of wishful thinking. It's natural to want things to be true, but when we let that desire cloud our judgment, it can lead to poor decisions.
That's why Elon Musk emphasizes recognizing the real truth. This requires honesty with yourself and the courage to face uncomfortable facts.
He also mentions the trap to avoid. It's easy to fall into the habit of ignoring reality because it feels easier or less painful. Have you ever experienced that, Timo?
Definitely, Sophia. For example, I once ignored feedback on a project because I didn't want to admit I'd made a mistake. But when I finally accepted the truth, I was able to improve and create a much better result.
That's a great example. Elon Musk's idea of striving to be less wrong is so powerful. It's not about being perfect, but about learning and improving over time.
And this ties directly to self-awareness. Being aware of your biases and recognizing when you're engaging in wishful thinking is the first step toward growth.
Now let's talk about how you can practice these ideas to improve your English listening and speaking skills.
First, for listening. First, for listening, list active listening. As you listen to this podcast or other materials, focus on understanding the meaning behind the words. Take notes on phrases or expressions you want to remember.
And don't just stop there. Pause the audio and repeat key sentences out loud. This helps you practice pronunciation and intonation.
For example, try saying wishful thinking is a trap to avoid, or my goal is to be less wrong. Pay attention to how the words flow together.
Another method is to create your own sentences using these phrases. For instance, Think about a situation where you ignored the truth because of wishful thinking. How would you describe it in English?
That's a fantastic exercise. It helps you connect the vocabulary to your own experiences, making it easier to remember and use.
You can also practice with a partner or record yourself speaking. Listening to your own voice can help you identify areas for improvement. Let's listen to a dialogue where someone is reflecting on their own experience with wishful thinking.
That is the conversation between Tom and Dana. It is a great example for using today's vocabulary in context.
You know, Dana, I realize I've been guilty of wishful thinking lately.
Really? What happened? Tom,
Well, I was convinced my startup idea would succeed just because I believed in it so strongly. I ignored all the signs that the market wasn't ready for it.
that's tough. Do you think you are ignoring the real truth?
Absolutely. I wanted it to be true so badly that I didn't listen to feedback or analyze the data objectively.
What helped you realize the problem?
I had a mentor who pointed out the flaws in my plan. At first, I resisted, but eventually I understood they were right.
That's a good example of striving to be less wrong. How are you approaching things differently now?
I'm focusing more on self-awareness and seeking feedback early. It's not easy, but it's helping me make better decisions.
To wrap up, remember that improving your listening and speaking skills takes time and consistent practice.
Use today's vocabulary: wishful thinking, real truth, trap to avoid, striving for improvement, and self-awareness in your daily conversations or writing.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. As Elon Musk said, the goal is to be less wrong.
Thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions or examples to share, leave us a comment or send us a message.
We'll see you in the next episode of English Pod.
Goodbye, everyone.
One of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong,